Hey you guys. Okay. I'm finishing touching up my makeup and I wanted to talk about what came across my mind. Today's just it's kind of a gray, melancholy day. I'm feeling a little melancholy. Not anything too bad, but I'm about to be hormonal for my women subscribers and new women checking out my video. You will probably understand that to some degree. But that's a whole other video. Hormones, PMS, PMDD. Anyway, I'm coming up on that soon. And, I just go through it during that time. And I have to prepare my body and my mind for that brain state. Mine is a little more severe than most people, than normal. And I will, at some point, make videos about that. I will explain it in what I go through. But my partner passed away last September, and after almost 7 years together, and a quite tumultuous, chaotic, turbulent relationship, and there was lots involved, and so I am, you know, still grieving that. It's just a few months back in the fall, and so I've really been having to work my way through a lot of things in this last year. So the melancholy comes and goes, the grief comes and goes in waves and stages. I have really good days where I can get myself on a really good, well-balanced energy, and then I have others where I just can't. So anyway, so around that topic, thinking about love and relationships, and I have a lot to share, about my relationship and what I went through, what we went through together, what we learned together. Just so much. I mean, it's just so multi-layered, and addiction and childhood trauma issues and just so much. It just makes my brain, until I can get all that together and start processing it more and get some videos up. It ran across my mind today thinking about what is appropriate. What is an appropriate time? What do people feel is appropriate to move on? And we could get into moving on after a breakup, but in my case, what is an appropriate time to move on after a partner has passed away? Now, before I get any further, my videos are simply for educational and awareness and personal opinion and experience purposes only. These are my opinions. These are my feelings, thoughts, experiences. I'm not a professional of any kind, just for educational and entertainment purposes, okay? But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and I do understand that this will be completely up to the individual preference. It will be different for every individual, and sometimes what is actually good, healthy, positive for one human being and their circumstance would not be good, healthy, positive for another. It would cause them chaos and toxic living and bad feelings. And so you see what I'm saying? It will vary by individual, and there is no one size fits all to this kind of stuff. So I do understand that. But I do have my personal feelings about it, how I operate, how I have evolved over the years, how I used to operate in regards to stuff like that, as far as moving on quickly. And it's kind of an in-depth topic that I'd like to shed some personal light on and insight. But I know everybody's going to have a different preference, a different thought about this. And there really are a million perspectives to it. There's no real one right way. And it's not a judgment thing if you do or do not move on quickly after you have lost your partner. Now, we can combine this together and talk about losing them to a breakup, divorce, separation, death, passing away. We can just include all of that because, to me, if you really, really love someone and you're all in, and depending on the amount of years you have behind you and the emotional investment and you're really devoted to them, in love with them, and it just keeps growing every year, and you're just working on that, and in love, and a deeper kind of love and empathy and care for them as well. If you're like in that place, and especially when you're middle aged, especially when you've got some experience behind you, and you did all the riffraff of your younger years, you might have been married and divorced before, you might have kids, you've gone through some things, especially when you get to a point in your life where you have emotionally and spiritually evolved, and you're more emotionally and spiritually mature, and you're really feeling things with a certain amount of depth, and making choices for real, and like really connecting to things. Okay. And then you lose somebody, or there is a breakup or a situation where you have to let them go, or you separate. It is almost like a death. And I can tell you that from my experience. It was almost like I had to go through two deaths. First, our breakup and separating 1 year before his passing, and then his actual passing. And so, yeah. So I'm going to get into it while I finish this touching up my face here. And I'm a person that I keep growing, studying, working on myself. I call it transmuting, trying to transmute anything, the things that really give me trouble in life, that are negative or dark or toxic, or I get hung up there because I'm human and I have an ego like everyone else. We're supposed to have some ego. It should be well balanced and healthy, not too far out of control, but not too crushed either, where there's a non-existent ego, where we're just so down on ourselves and so inferior that we have no ego. It's supposed to be well balanced. We need some ego, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, I'm a person who really does puts quite a bit of effort into being self-aware, taking a look at my character defects, and evolving through those things. And I get hung up in ego places. Fuck yeah. Especially when I was younger. I've come a long way, approaching 50 soon. I got to quit saying that because I'm only 47. Okay, 45. No, 40. Okay, 38. Okay, no, I'm 47. And, I have come a long way, but there were times in my younger years where I have that experience. I know what it's like to be stuck in a pettier state, or on, in a more emotionally immature place. And those kinds of thoughts, feelings, emotions, lash outs, actions, I know about them because I've done them and had to evolve through them. And I'm a person that likes to take a look at shit like that in myself and self-examine, self-inventory, work with my therapist, work with myself, whatever I have to do. And take and transmute those things from a place of causing me problems in life, a place of lower vibrational frequency that causes more toxic thinking and actions within my connections and my loved ones, and transmute it to a place that I can do something better with it, that I can filter it through my system and process it through my system, and somehow come out on a more emotionally and spiritually mature level with that particular issue or problem I'm hung up on, or particular toxic loophole way of thinking. I'm always trying to transmute shit like that to come out for the greater good, for myself and for the ones I love, for people around me. Because to me, it just feels like ignorant and stuck. If I can't look at some of those character defects and if I can't evaluate the way I'm thinking and feeling and grow, in that capacity, then it just makes me feel, lost, ignorant, and stuck. So that's why it's always been important to me to try and transmute shit. Now, sometimes we have to, damn it, it's over our head, it's fucking bad, it has hurt us, betrayed us, pissed us off, made us angry, it has been unfair, unjust, it is so much, or it's a tragic loss or something like that. And we're going to have to stay in those feelings a while. We're not going to be able to just take them and transmute them and, oh, everything's perfectly fine and so positive and it feels so. We're not going to be able to do that overnight. That would be fake. That is what people do when they're in denial and shock and running and escaping. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes we're going to have to sit in that shit a while and really transmute, work on it, really feel it for a while, explore those negative emotions and pain and sorrow and anger and all these things, and do what we can with that, express it, talk through it, sort it, examine it. And then after a while, as time goes on, we will heal enough to be able to transmute it and to be able to get up above the negative part of it and heal through it, and then transmute it out and use it for something better, for something more positive. And that will go ahead and click over into a higher way of being or a higher way of thinking and interacting. And we can go on from that and not feel so stuck in that angry, tragic, or horribly grief-stricken, heavy place. Okay, so that's kind of a quick, super fast rundown of kind of what goes on in my processes and how I transmute things and yada, 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 whatever. And try to get beyond it and heal from it and go on. But anyway, so my thoughts on what's appropriate. Well, first of all, I know we can't really tell anybody else on this earth what is appropriate for them. Y'all, it's getting hot in this bathroom. I gotta turn some air on. We really can't, and I'm aware of that. Now, I used to make a lot of videos where I get pretty heated and, you need to do this, and you people who this and that and this, and that's okay sometimes, it is what it is. I was having a mood. I was having a time in my life where, and that's okay for the camera, and that's okay and valid sometimes to let those feelings flow through and out. But I want people to know that ultimately, I do realize that we cannot tell anyone else what is right for them, okay? And pick and choose that and possibly even really know, for sure what is right. So always keep that in mind. Again, personal preference here and what I've been through and what I feel. But at this age and over the years, after things I've been through and experienced and felt and had to work on, I personally can't, not only do I not have any interest at all or desire to do such a thing right now, but I just can't physically do that. Like after losing my partner last September, and he and I really broke up a year prior to that, and we're living in two different places, two different lifestyles. It was horrifically painful. And whether it was the breakup or losing him to passing away, for God's sake, at neither time did I have the slightest desire to date or, hey baby, what's up? Let's hook up. Or, and a lot of people do that shit, especially during breakups. Now, again, your age is going to factor into this. I did a lot of shit in my 20s that I wouldn't dream of doing now. With a less emotionally mature mindset, a less spiritually mature mindset. I was who I was back then in my 20s and early 30s. And at that time, yes, I would have been the type of person that would, just casually dating though. I was married twice, divorced twice in my early years. And by the time I was 24, my children's father and I separated. He was a great man, but we had issues. I had issues, and I needed to grow up. I needed to continue evolving and working on things on my own. And so, we went our separate ways. We ended up divorcing. And really for about 20 years after that, I did not all the way commit and move in as a couple with anybody else while raising my children all those years, going to school, working. But I did date a lot. And I did have a couple that were pretty damn serious with several years of dating that I had some deeper feelings for. But a great deal of it was just casual dating. Now, I went through a lot of processes in those years, feelings, rejections, heartbreaks, but mild ones, things I could get on through. And I was in a lot of therapy and really working on myself and growing through a lot of that stuff in those years. But it wasn't until my children were almost grown and I was 40 that another person came into my life, back into my life or into my life, that I actually kind of was able to fully surrender myself on that level, and we fell in love. And it was under very tragic circumstances. He had lost a child. He was alcoholic. He struggled with a lot of things going on, but he was also a unique, special, wonderful human being. And we fell in love, and we had all these chaotic circumstances going on, and we really didn't leave each other's side for almost 6 years. The first few years straight, we were together literally all the time. It is an odd case. It's an odd scenario, and I will talk more about that in the future. But he had lost a child, and the level of broken that he was on, he was completely shattered, and he needed a lot of care. And so I became self-employed, and so that I could have that time to devote to him, and it kind of went from there. But anyway, so it's going to depend on your age, your experience level, what you've been through in life, your ego, how well developed and balanced that is, and your core wounds and issues. Okay, this stuff can get pretty deep, but the way I feel about it at this age right now, no. I don't have any desire at all. Not at this point. And I didn't, even when we broke up, because his alcoholism was out of control. And really all I wanted was some space and time just to get myself together, because living together, his alcoholism had gotten so out of control and so traumatizing. I needed a couple months to just get myself together, really, and he had gotten to a point where the addiction was so consuming and his wounds were so consuming, and he had been diagnosed with throat cancer. He had a lot of medical issues. A lot was going on at the time, okay? But he didn't reason well when it came to me trying to communicate a need for space, a need for empathy, a need for rest. And I'm going to tell y'all, I loved this man, okay? I hated being away from him. I wanted to stay together with him for the rest of both of our lives. I loved spending time with him. I loved his company, his energy. I loved everything about this man, okay? So for me to say I need a little space, it was serious. It meant that his alcoholism had made him so out of control and so overboard and so boundary trampling and waking me up at all hours of the night and just doing odd things and not reasoning, not listening. It was scary. And I felt really backed into a corner to make these decisions for my health, my sanity. And I will get all into that at some point in other videos and share my experience and what those choices were like and what I had to go through. But I'm just looking at the wind is getting crazy outside. But he did not take it well. And I really didn't have a choice but to take some space from him at that time. Didn't want to at all. But he went to stay with some family, and I stayed, did my thing. And his reasoning at that time, he just was so angry with me, wanted to punish me, and the only way for him as an alcoholic and an addict to cope with his pain and turmoil, instead of talking with me and reasoning it out and actually going out there and working our way back together and just saying to me, yes, I'll give you a little space and a little time, I realized that for years now, you've been running yourself in circles to keep up with me and to help me, and I keep you awake at night. And I realize I can get quite out of control with my drinking. And, you know, it's really hard for a severe addict, alcoholic, a person who's been at it lifelong, who is eaten alive by their inner demons and wounds and early childhood programming, and they haven't had a lot of therapy in their life. It is really hard for them to stop and see you. It is. It just is. It is really hard for them to stop and be aware of you, to just stop and think about you, what you're suffering through. And sometimes it's because they aren't deeply connecting to you, even if they want to be, even if they are on as many levels as they possibly can from that place. Because he and I had a very deep connection and a very deep affection and love for one another. But at the same time, from where he was, and I knew he was that way when we got together, and somewhere in my soul I knew he didn't have many years left on this earth. I knew his medical history, I knew his trauma, I knew a lot, and still proceeded to go forward with him. But yeah, I wish I had finished this makeup before I started this video, but I don't want to talk about it while I have the energy and while it's on my mind. So anyway, I did not want it like that. And I really meant with all of my heart that, hey, I just need a little bit of time and space. I was losing everything trying to keep up with him, you know, and there's a lot of details and it's really complicated, but I'm going to move on to the topic. What's appropriate as far as moving on when we have broken up with someone, or they've broken up with us, or divorce, and we really love them, or they have passed away. We're going to get deeper into that in just a second. But yeah, so he didn't reason this. It did not go maturely, and this did not go well. And this turned out to be the last year of his life when all this started happening. I didn't know that. On some kind of soul level, I knew it was getting close. But consciously, I really had hopes that he would live, that he would heal, that he would make it. So anyway, you know how you kind of put yourself in this, no, that's not going to happen place. But anyway, so what he did to cope with all of this turmoil inside and being angry with me and hurt because our little safe, close bond, our little bubble of protection and being so close in those years, and you know, the energy that I was giving him and the love and the nurturing and everything we had, he was having to get used to being out somewhere else around scarier people, a tougher crowd, you know, and how he ended up coping with that, instead of going, hey, I want to come back, I want to work this out. I would have been more than willing. The door was always open for that. All he had to do was say it, address it, communicate it to me in a way so I didn't have to be terrified of him anymore, because I was becoming terrified even of the person I loved the most because of his alcoholism and all-consuming, unreasonable, and he wasn't on drugs at the time that we were together in those years, not at all, because he was on probation and he couldn't. So how he coped with the situation, instead of, I wasn't really asking for much either. I had accepted his drinking for years. I knew he was going to drink till he died. I didn't demand that he stop. Hard liquor, yes. Beer, he drank as much beer as he wanted to, enough to kill a horse a lot of days, unfortunately. But I was really fair and accepting of just about everything. You know, I just loved this person and truly wanted to spend as much time with him as I could while he was on this earth, and the beautiful connection that we had. But alcohol kept tearing us apart. The dark entity attachments that are all over people when they are heavy drinkers and heavy drug users and not dealing with wounds. It was all around us, all consuming. And so, yeah, he wanted to, basically decided to go back to doing heavier drugs, go back to doing hard liquor, which he had been off of for several years, with cirrhosis, with liver failing for several years, with newly diagnosed throat cancer in the early stages where they were treating it and it could have been stopped or slowed down significantly. With all of this stuff going on, he decided to do that. And once he got back on that crazy ass drug, meth, well, that was it. Alcohol's bad enough, but when a person drinks alcohol, they are able to have emotions. All of them. All of their deeper shit comes out, all of their childhood stuff, all of their sorrows, all of their deeper feelings towards you. They can be in a very emotional place, whereas with methamphetamine, you can fucking forget it. They are like cyborgs. It robs them of every, like a machine, a fucking robot. And he would drink hard liquor to counteract the tweak of methamphetamine. And it balanced for him. It balanced where at that time, when he was with me, everyone could tell he was falling down drunk, you know, because he wasn't doing drugs. And so the alcohol, with his liver the way it was, he wasn't processing his beer, even his alcohol at all. It was just go straight to his brain, and the ammonia levels would get real high. All these things would happen to his brain, alcoholic delusions, and there were so many things I had to study. It just went on constantly. But with methamphetamine, he could drink as much hard liquor as he wanted to, it seemed like, and nobody ever knew he was drunk. Nobody ever knew he was still drinking. He appeared to be sober. But what that meth does is it completely strips away all feeling, any remorse that they might have had, any empathy they might have had, any thought of you and or their life, their family, what they're leaving behind, what they're doing to others is gone. Okay, so that's what he turned into. That's what he did to cope, and started running around with a bunch of fucking, just anything he could grab onto to obsess over, to distract him from dealing with me. And we did deeply love each other. And I know that he loved me. I know that. And he knew that I loved him too. But this was too much. It was, at that time in his life, it was too much for him to cope with, to sort it all out. And the fears of his medical issues and, you know, the problems between us and that small ultimatum that I needed just a little bit for me. And it really hurt me and pissed me off that he couldn't give me that he couldn't be reasonable enough to give me that. I felt it quite selfish. And it got a lot worse, trust me. The ugliness, the way I was spoken to, the distance between us for months and months and months, and who he ran around with and hooked up with, and just really just went crazy not to deal with his issues and his real feelings for me and his family and his life. And, you know, but I also had to put myself in a person's shoes who has been diagnosed with cancer and who has a lot of medical issues and who is afraid deep down but doesn't want to show that vulnerability at that time, and who has all this on their mind. And he did not have good coping skills at all. He did not like to face things. He had some type of avoidant disorder along with a couple of other disorders. And so it was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever had to go through. And I died inside when he chose to do it like that. I still wanted to get married. I mean, I still, you know, I was there. I was going to see this through till the end. And so I ended up having a mental and emotional breakdown. I had put so much into him for so many years, and really kind of let my focus on my job, my money, my income, career, plans, bills, so much had piled up. I had a car, couldn't pay the sales tax on my car. It was enormous, so I couldn't get it licensed. My life was really going down the toilet from putting all my focus on him. And yeah, it just, so I pretty much ended up losing everything, having to let everything go and come back and stay with my mother. so that I could recover from this, so that I could recover from those years. And that is when he kept running wild and doing what he was doing. And a year later, his cancer had spread because he didn't care for it. He kept doing what he was doing. And we did end up coming back together, reconnecting, not moving in together, not ever able to make things right again. But as a person who loved him dearly, and two people who loved each other in his final months, I was there. No matter the hurt, the betrayal, what he inflicted on me at a time in his life where he was so consumed with, and yes, I held him accountable for it. You damn right. And yes, I was angry. And yes, I had every right to be. But that's how it kind of went. In his final months, he wanted me to come and as much as possible. And we just knew we were screwed. He made his choices. I made mine. And there was no way back. But I did the best I could to go and see him and be with him and give him love and healing and nurturing in those final months of his life, and help with his beatings. And he had a port, and he had so many medications he was on, and the cancer was, just getting worse. And, seeing someone you love suffer like that is horrific. And so I had to kind of tuck all my feelings away as far as what I didn't get, what you didn't do for me, what you didn't say, what you did, how this happened. I had to kind of grab a hold of my ego. And I had every right, if I had wanted to just say, no, you did me so wrong. You basically just left me to die and went and handled this in a very immature way when all I needed was you to see me just a little bit and give me just a little bit of space and a little bit of empathy so that I could rest at night. And, but I did. We reconnected in those months, and I was actually there when he passed. At the hospital, when they took the machines off, I was actually there holding him during his last breath. So that is how much love I had for this man, and still do. But so we can look at the way, for an example, the way he and I both handled that separation and breakup. Okay, it's going to depend on the people involved and what's going on in their minds, and what kind of coping skills they have, how emotionally mature they are. All of that will factor in. But, for example, the way I told you he handled it versus the way I handled it. I came back to live with my mother, and I did not go out. I did not party. I did not look for people. I was concerned with saving my life, getting my debts paid, getting myself sorted out, getting some rest, getting my health under control, and devastated at the way my partner decided to take that turn. And I knew that I needed time. There were times where I was almost catatonic, where I could barely form sentences. The heartbreak and the heaviness was so deep in my heart in that year. And so for me to even fathom looking for some date, or, well, fuck you then, I'll just go get me another dude since you hurt me like that and pissed me off. And I can't even imagine, okay? But that is the way my partner handled it, because that was the level of emotional maturity he was on at that time, and the alcoholism and all of his unresolved traumas and wounds, and that is the way he operated. That was part of his coping and defense mechanisms. And I saw him do it very often over the 7-year period we were together, with different situations, different family members, different people. That is the way he coped with things, by avoiding them and grabbing onto distractions as much as possible, and losing himself in distractions and obsessing over distractions. But those distractions weren't very meaningful to him. The things that were more meaningful, he struggled with more. And It was complex. So that is an example, though, for instance, is how the both of us felt at that time. And it'll be like this. Sometimes it's not necessarily that they didn't love you. It's not necessarily that they did not have deeper feelings for you, because I know damn well he did. We had very deep feelings for one another, but it is where they are at that time, mentally, emotionally, all of that. What level they've grown to, how much of the inner stuff they have worked through, how they feel about themselves. And oftentimes they just cannot. It's very hard for some people in that situation, in that mental state, to handle a more pure love being given to them, and a more pure form of devotion that is so straight up and authentic, and not trying to cheat on them, not trying to jerk them around, not trying to lie, but a person who also is very assertive, has self-respect, has boundaries. Sometimes it is hard for a person to rise to that level, to that frequency, and meet you there. And it's not that they don't love you. It is not that they don't have deeper feelings for you sometimes. It's just they just can't do it. Human nature is so freaking complex, okay? I'm watching Baby Reindeer right now, okay? Not to change the subject, but yeah. Okay. It's rough. I'm going to tell you that right now. Trigger warning, spoiler warning, all of that. It's rough. But it was so moving to me. And I really related to both of the main characters for a while. Like different things that they were feeling or doing, and how I had to evolve through those types of things over the years and grow. And then the fucking confession and the speech that Donnie gives on stage towards the last episode, that was so powerful and authentic and real, when he talked about abuse and what had happened to him and what he was continuing to do to himself because of all this kind of shit. Oh my God. That speech is a level of authenticity and stripping away of parts of the ego and unzipping the masks and the layers and all of that defense crap, and just bearing the soul. And that is a rare individual that can really do that. It's damn difficult to do. Even for me, and I've been working at it for years, being that vulnerable and authentic and raw and real with myself and others, it is damn hard to do that. But a very powerful scene. And it relates to what I'm talking about, how people cope with things. Just like Donnie in that film was coping with one lie after another, and one trick and web after another, and upset with himself for not being able to face things and set boundaries and handle things the way he should handle them, and continuing to go back to abusive situations, or this situation, or drugs, or alcohol, or whatever the fuck, tolerating things that he should never tolerate from people, all these kinds of things, because somewhere deep within inside him, he identified with them. He felt himself to be so low. He felt himself not worthy of doing better. He felt all these damn different things inside. And I got a lot to say about that kind of stuff too. So anyway, just like the shit he talked about in that scene, though, that is kind of where my partner was stuck. And I cried when I watched that scene this morning. It gave me chills. Because my partner and I had many discussions over almost 7 years, deep, dark, wonderful, good, bad, all in between, childhood, philosophy, spirituality, life. We just talked and talked for years. But he also, and he would become very vulnerable, and I loved that about him. He would open, and we connected. We let both of ourselves open, which is hard to do. But for two damaged people who also grew up in trauma, it's hard. And he would also have trouble with it and go right back in his shell and go right back to his defenses and go right back and get drunk and go right back and try to talk to a whole bunch of girls and distract himself and go out and do something reckless and get in trouble and get arrested. Or this is how he coped with deeper emotions and having so much love in his life, and somebody that was true and real and intense and feeling a lot of these things, and the darkness and the traumas in his life. That's how he coped with everything. But that scene with that Donnie guy reminded me, not exactly the same problems and stuff, but reminded me a lot of where my partner was mentally and emotionally, and the webs and the circles and the shit that was pounding down in his mind and his feelings all the time on himself. And I've also been there. Okay, it's a very powerful scene where he releases that, and it made me cry and gave me chills this morning, because I wanted my partner to be able, he would go back in his shell and he would gaslight and defend himself, and I didn't do that, I didn't say that, and you're just did. He couldn't get beyond that protective ego layers. And I so badly wanted him to be able to get free of that, not only because I was heartbroken and I wanted to hear it, I knew, but I didn't want to have to do the telepathy thing anymore. I knew, but I wanted to hear it. And he used to say, I'm not good with words. I'm not really good with words. And I had to understand that most of the time. But I wanted so badly before his passing for him, like that Donnie guy, to just say to everybody, look, enough. This is what's really going on with me. And he couldn't. No, that's way, and it's not that he wasn't a very strong, fierce, hardworking fucking dude in his day. He was, when he was younger and raising children, but things just really got bad for him and broke his soul, and he could not. He had to lie to himself all the time. He had to lie to himself, he had to lie to others, because he had so much fear and terror and anxiety. And yeah, this came out in narcissistic tendencies, pathologically narcissistic tendencies, quite a bit, and they were very fucking hurtful. Pissed me off a lot too. But yeah, that show, Baby Reindeer, check it out. It's very powerful. It shows that you can't just sum up human nature in one category, one label, one box, one disorder. Oh, well, they didn't do this, they must not have felt that. And they didn't do this over here, so they must not have loved. And they did this over here, so that's good, check, that's bad, check. No, you just can't. It gives you a very deep insight into the mental and emotional struggles of certain human beings when certain things happen to them, or just what's in their personality and how deeply they feel about it, and how they really want to do something about it but can't, and the hell and the torment they go through trying to. It is a very good insight into stuff like that. Okay, very powerful scene in episode number 6. So, but moving back to the topic, and then yeah, I'm probably gonna have to do a part 2 to this, because there's a lot that I haven't gotten to, but I wanted to get this started. But moving back more to the topic of what is appropriate when people break up and they separate, or someone passes away, or there's a divorce or whatever, and you go apart, how quickly people just jump on something else. Okay, well, that's what we're examining, and I'm giving you the example of what my partner did to cope with our separation and what I did. But I, at the time, was on a more emotionally mature level than him, and, not consumed in addiction, and not dealing with just being diagnosed with cancer. And I'm not excusing any of that. People don't have a right to hurt us. They don't have a right to trample our feelings and abuse and use. They just don't have a right to, no matter what is going on, no matter if they are about to die. But they do. And they do. Humans do all kinds of things, and human nature is very dark and complex sometimes. And it can be very light and beautiful and wonderful sometimes too, you know? And that's kind of why I brought that show up, because it gives you a look at all that, of the struggles that some people go through, especially someone who has suffered a fucking horrific trauma, and what it does to their self-esteem, to their confidence. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how much you love them. It doesn't matter, like Donnie and Terry and him falling in love with Terry and loving her. When he made that speech and that confession on that stage, it made me cry and it gave me chills, because was exactly what I knew that my partner felt for me, but where he was stuck in the months before he died, in that year we separated, and all that he ran and did and went through until he got so sick he couldn't do it anymore. And that scene with Donnie on the stage, Baby Reindeer, when he confesses all that and about the woman that he loved and what was really going on in his mind, it gave me chills, because I knew I was meant to see that scene, because my heart has been stuck on that my partner ran out of time and he didn't get to express with words out to me or to others some of the things that were really going on, at least to me, that I clearly wanted to hear, instead of him avoiding and, oh, no, don't talk about that, or, oh, do that. Right. Okay. But I understood why he was like that. And I know other people like that too, because it terrifies them to talk about things. You know, it's hell having an avoidance disorder. I have a terrible anxiety disorder. I know what that can be all about. There are times I avoid certain things too. But, all right, back to the appropriate. But yeah, that scene killed me. And it gave me some peace at the same time. You know, I get my messages how I get them. My guidance, my spiritual, and I knew I was meant to see that scene. What I felt when I was watching it, the words, the things he said, that was exactly where we were. And we didn't get to say I love you a lot in that last year as we had before, or even show it, or it was just the worst thing that could happen in the last year before his life to us, after how close we had been and how much we had loved each other. And, you know, more focus kind of went on the cancer and the sickness and what he was going through in the last months. And yes, the drug and the alcohol he was drinking, keeping his mind a certain way and kind of colder and more detached. But trying, I did feel him try to reach back for me after all he had done and how long he had been running. And I just couldn't hold it against him. I just could not hold it against him. He did reach back for me. Please come see me. Please come see me. Because I just left him alone after he wanted to run and party and skanks and do and punish me like that and just leave me and hurt me like that for so long, for so many months. I just let go. And I wouldn't take his calls. I wouldn't talk to him. I just let him have that life. And yeah, so, but he did reach back for me at the end in the last few months, as I knew he would want me. I knew he always wanted me close, but not under the circumstances. It just couldn't be. And I always wanted him close too, but it wouldn't have appeared that way. See, that's how all these people get these judgments and assumptions and misunderstandings, but it's not even what's really going on inside our hearts a lot of the time. It's not even what's going on with people sometimes. I loved this man and wanted him more than anything in the world. I was so devoted to him and so in love with him, no matter what he was suffering or going through. But at the same time, in that last year, I was having to stand my ground, my boundaries, and keep a distance, even though I wanted him back more than anything. I wanted to work it out more than anything. But as long as he was on that drug, he was talking shit, disrespectful, gaslighting, manipulating, blaming, not taking any accountability, That terrified me, and I had to stay within my boundaries. And I wish to God he would have backed down. I wish to God he would have come and during that time, but so yeah, I had to just keep my boundary firm for me. And it hurt like a motherfucker. But to people who didn't know, and he did lie. He did have people like flying monkeys, they call them. He did have people believing. People on the outside wouldn't have known. They would have believed oh, poor you. Nobody loves you. Your girlfriend was such a bitch. Your fiance. We were engaged. We were supposed to get married and everything. Poor you. Oh, your fiance. She was such a bitch. Oh, she didn't love you. She didn't take care of you, look after you. She was just an old bitch who just threw you out, or she cheated, or she just don't want you around. What's wrong with her? That is the stories that people like this go and tell when they're in that fucking state. That is exactly what they do to manipulate and control other people. So naturally, yes, so that they can have more enablers, and so that they can have more pity, and so that they control others. They need to be around people that are weaker minded, that are also possibly more strung out than they are, that have nothing, so that they can, flash a little bit of money, which they don't always have. That's going to run out. So that they can set traps for people, so that they can reel people in. They do a lot of that. They do. Okay? And so that's what's fucked up, is that people on the outside would either never know about